On June 13, 1994, in San Antonio, Texas, the Barclay family contacted the police to report that their son, Nicholas, had gone missing. Investigations began immediately, and the police discovered that the last place Nicholas was seen was at a basketball court with his friends. He was supposed to return home with his brother Jason, who said that Nicholas had told him to go home and that he would follow shortly. However, Nicholas never showed up. The police searched for several months, but the young man was nowhere to be found, and everyone believed he had died. 3 years after his disappearance, in 1997, the police contacted the Barclay family and informed them that their son Nicholas was alive and in Spain, but had partially lost his memory. They asked someone from the family to travel there and identify him. His sister went to Spain to see if this person was indeed her brother, and when she saw him, she confirmed it was him. Nicholas then returned home and was warmly welcomed by his family, who were convinced he was Nicholas. However, the shocking and unexpected twist was that the person now living with them was not their son Nicholas, but a chameleon-like criminal who had been evading Interpol for years. Peace be upon you. I am Dora, and for those of you new to my channel, I talk about real crimes, terrifying topics, sometimes stories, and sometimes real-life subjects. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications on my channel because my dream is to reach 100,000 subscribers this year, so please support me. Let's begin. Today, I will tell you the story of the criminal who impersonated 500 people during his lifetime and deceived 2 continents, Frederick Borden, also known as the chameleon. Frederick was born in 1974 in a small village called Nanterre in the suburbs of Paris. He lived with his mother for the first 3 years of his life, but his mother was not a person of good character, as she was always preoccupied with her illicit relationships to the point where she didn't know who Frederick's father was. She sent Frederick to be raised by her parents, so he was brought up by his grandfather and grandmother. Life with them wasn't great, but at least he was taken care of. He stayed with them until he was 15 years old. In that year, he discovered his strange talent. He would tell everyone that his father was a British intelligence agent and that his mother had died in a car accident, which was why he lived in his grandfather's house. What was unique about Frederick was that he not only lied, but also believed his own lies to the extent that people around him believed him too. When he turned 16, Frederick was sent to a juvenile detention centre in Mouchin, where he lived with his grandparents due to his involvement in fraud and theft. Instead of reforming himself in prison, things escalated and he began to train in new things, acquiring skills that made him an exceptional actor in prison. Everyone went crazy because of him. He would fall to the ground, convulse, and pretend to have an epileptic seizure. When he regained consciousness, he would ask people around him about his identity and location, pretending to have lost his memory. After a few days, he would return to normal, and sometimes he even pretended to be insane. The strange thing was that everyone believed everything he said, to the point where they transferred him to a hospital to treat him as insane, amnesiac, or epileptic. Even the doctors couldn't uncover his deception. All he wanted was to go to the hospital to escape, and indeed he did. However, his joy didn't last long. After escaping, he went to Paris and thought that the only solution to live a decent life was to move to Britain with all grace and calmness, as if he had done nothing wrong. He went to the police station in Paris and told them that his name was Jimmy Sale, a British teenager lost there, asking for their help to return to his family. However, when the officer started speaking to him in English, Frederick fell silent because he couldn't speak English. At first, he didn't speak because he didn't know how to speak English. At that moment, they discovered the lie and arrested him. revealing his true identity and returning him to prison. But this time, they put him in a prison in Paris, and there he played the same trick, fooled everyone, and they transferred him to the hospital again. He deceived the doctors and escaped for the second time after spending 2 years in prison. It doesn't matter how he escaped from prison. What matters is what he did after his escape. During his time in prison, he met prisoners from Spain and America and managed to learn English well and Spanish reasonably. After his release, he continued to impersonate different characters until he was exposed all over France and became wanted. He then crossed the borders and travelled to Spain, where he started a new life with new characters until he found the perfect opportunity to fulfill his dream and travel to America. During that period, he came across a magazine talking about the story of missing teenagers in America. He saw a picture of a teenager who had been missing for 3 years and 4 months, named Nicholas Barclay. Frederick noticed a slight resemblance between him and Nicholas, so he researched more about the subject and gathered more pictures of Nicholas. The problem was that Frederick's eyes were brown, his skin was olive, and his hair was black, while Nicholas had blue eyes, blonde hair, and white skin. The second issue was that Nicholas had 3 tattoos on his body. On the same day, Frederick went to a tattoo artist and asked her to tattoo the same tattoos Nicholas had on his body. He dyed his hair blonde and then contacted the police station, telling them that he was an American teenager who had been lost and needed help. He told them his name was Nicholas Barclay. He was a young American, and he had lost his memory, only remembering his name and some basic things. He asked them to contact the relevant authorities to help him and find a way to return to his family after losing contact with them. He waited a little to make sure the police understood the situation and then called them again after an hour. During this time, the police were in contact with the National Center for Missing Children, and it turned out that his story was true and there was a missing teenager by that name. When he contacted them again, it was clear that they understood the situation and everything was fine. He decided to surrender himself. When he went to the station and informed them of the news, they immediately transferred him to the American embassy, where they treated him better. The next day, his sister came to meet him, and the surprise was that she recognized him at first sight and confirmed he was her brother. As for his eye color, Frederick told them that he had been kidnapped by an organ trafficking gang and exposed to a caustic substance on his eyes, which changed their color. Due to this incident, his eye color turned brown. He also told them he had gone through many things he didn't remember, but he couldn't forget the tragedy he had been through, and his American accent had changed due to the many experiences he had gone through. After the embassy confirmed that the person before them was Nicholas, they provided him with an American passport and flew him back with his sister to Texas. The family celebrated his return and welcomed him warmly, continuing like this for nearly a year. No one doubted his identity, and everyone treated him as the real Nicholas. The only thing he feared and worried about was the real Nicholas reappearing, but this was impossible as he had been missing for 4 years, and they believed he was dead. What helped him even more was that Nicholas's mother gave him her son's diary and everything related to him, along with a box containing all of her son's memories. He memorized everything and adopted the character exceptionally well, ready to live as Nicholas forever. However, there was an FBI investigator who thwarted all his plans after Frederick arrived in America. He tried every possible way to avoid the investigation and would attend psychological therapy sessions to restore his memory. These sessions were supposed to last for a few months, but Frederick took advantage of this and showed everyone that he wasn't improving, extending his therapy for a year. Of course, he did this because he didn't want to be investigated by the FBI. After all this time, investigator Nancy requested to meet him in a restaurant, telling the family she wouldn't interrogate him or pressure him, and that she wanted to have some donuts and talk a little. But she insisted on talking to him because the matter was important and could provide them with information leading to the gang or solving other crimes. Indeed, what she wanted happened, and Nancy met with the Nicholas with brown eyes in the restaurant. Before meeting with him, Nancy had researched the topic of eye colour change and found studies confirming that it was impossible. So she was certain she would meet someone else and not the real Nicholas. She confirmed everything in the first minute she sat with him. When Frederick sat in front of her, he had studied Nicholas's character well and had trained to deal with investigators. However, he forgot one important and unexpected detail. When he dyed his hair blonde, his hair had grown, and the roots of his natural black hair were showing. It was clear to the investigator that his hair was black and not blonde. When she started talking to him, she was convinced he was Nicholas, and even his body language showed he was telling the truth. The only clue she had was his hair and eye colour. She immediately contacted Nicholas's mother and told her he wasn't her son, but the mother refused completely and even refused to do any analysis to reveal his identity, asking the investigator not to contact her again. Why did the mother refuse to meet the investigator at all costs? And why was she so convinced he was her son and not someone else? The important question is, how could the family not notice the significant differences in his eye colour and appearance? After Nancy told the story to her colleague Charlie, he said, "Of course this family is hiding something, and from the beginning, they were convinced he wasn't their son. Why were they silent and telling everyone he was their real son and had returned to them? And everything was fine." They decided to investigate the matter quietly and cautiously so that the Barclay family wouldn't suspect anything. When they began their investigation, they noticed strange and inexplicable behaviour from the person I mentioned at the beginning of this article, Jason, Nicholas's older brother. When the Nicholas lookalike returned after 3 years of disappearance, Jason's reaction was very unsettling. The family said he wasn't happy at all with the news of his brother's return. On the contrary, he was anxious when he heard the news. When Nicholas arrived, the entire family was waiting to celebrate him, but Jason had gone to another city the previous day and had no contact with his brother for over a month. He couldn't bear the pressure from his family, so he came to see his brother. He was anxious and scared, but once he met his brother and greeted him, it was clear he was surprised. After that, he smiled as if he knew this wasn't his brother but didn't say anything. Instead, he told them that Nicholas ran away and disappeared. The question is, how did he appear and disappear, and why? He was trying to break into his parents' house, and why didn't Jason approach his brother and try to talk to him? Nancy and her colleague began interrogating Jason formally. He was confused, sometimes crying, saying he knew nothing and had no connection to the matter. Then he asked for a lawyer and managed to stop the interrogation. But a few days before the second interrogation, shocking news reached investigator Nancy that Jason had died. The cause of Jason's death was a drug overdose, making the only witness and suspect in the case dead. Nancy tried to talk to Nicholas's mother to complete the investigation, convinced she had important information. Unfortunately, she couldn't do anything as she had no evidence, and Nicholas's mother could stop the interrogation through her lawyer, claiming her mental state after losing her children didn't allow her to participate in the investigation. The case file was closed, and the case of Nicholas remains a mystery to this day. As for Frederick, after completing his prison sentence, he was deported to France in 2003. He then disappeared under the identity of a teenager named Robin Sanchez. As usual, he was exposed and imprisoned, becoming famous in Europe and America, and continued repeating the same thing until 2007. Then, for the first time, he decided to stay true to his real identity, thanks to a girl he met and married, vowing to turn a new leaf. Frederick Borden lives today in France with his family and 5 children. He speaks on his TikTok account about his adventures and mentions that he impersonated over 500 characters in his life. When asked if he missed those days, he said the goal of everything he did was to live peacefully and feel the warmth of a family. He always wanted to sit at a table with a family that included a father, mother, and siblings. Today he has a family and doesn't need to live under another identity. That was the story for this week. Don't forget to activate the subscription button to see all the new content, press the like button, and wait for us with a new story every week.